Good afternoon from the UK. I'm Clarice Neville, a researcher, part of the Complex Review Support Unit at the University of Leicester, and today I'll be talking through one of our tools, MetaInsight COVID-19, and the feasibility study that was associated with developing it. But firstly, I just wanted to acknowledge some people, as this was very much a team effort. So firstly, thanks to the feasibility study team. You can see their names on the article on the screen in a moment, which we published on this work. Secondly, to those that helped develop the original MetaInsight tool. And thirdly, to the rest of the CRSU team who are great for all those interesting discussions. So what was our motivation behind this feasibility study? Well, as we're all aware, very early on during the pandemic, there were lots of trials relating to the treatments of COVID-19 being published, with the first ones being in April 2020, and by the end of 2020, there were over 2,500 registered worldwide, which is just a staggering amount. And naturally, as is the case for most health technology assessment fields, the next step is to conduct a systematic review, where all the trials and evidence regarding COVID-19 are collated and appraised and pulled together. And by January 2021, there was actually over 450 systematic reviews for COVID-19 that had been registered for Prospero, which is the prospective register of systematic reviews. And as a group, the CRSU, we felt that this was a lot of systematic reviews. And when we took a little bit a closer look at those that were registered, we hypothesized that there was possibly an overlap going on and that a lot of duplicate work could have been taking place where multiple systematic reviews were actually essentially subgroups of a larger data set of evidence. So we felt we recognized a gap in this realm and that we could help with it. And we wanted to do our bit for COVID-19. But to point out that there were already at this point a few groups doing groundbreaking work, collating all the COVID-19 evidence and creating living reviews. So collating all the evidence as it came in. And it really was amazing work, and we knew we didn't need to replicate that. These groups already had it under control, but we still felt we had something to add. And in particular, we felt that our network meta-analysis tool, MetaInsight, could aid the process. So if you've not come across it before, MetaInsight is a user-friendly tool to conduct NMAs, but it also allows exploration, reanalysis, and sensitivity analysis of the NMA. And these features in particular, we believed could help with the duplication issue of running various systematic reviews that are essentially subgroups of a larger data set. And we also saw at the time that none of these living COVID groups had got as far as running NMAs, which is completely understandable. NMA is sort of one of the last things you do. But we already had a tool that could automate conducting NMAs, and there's lots of benefits to running NMAs because they allow that simultaneous comparison of all treatments. So to quickly introduce MetaInsight, if you've not come across it, it's really accessible, it's web-based and involves no coding, it's just point and click. The first thing the user would do would be load in their data set, and then they'd go to the data analysis tab, which I'm showing now. So firstly, we have various options on the left here. This includes what type of outcome measure to use, whether the outcome is desirable or undesirable, which is used for ranking, and whether to use a random or fixed effects model. Then at the bottom of the pane is where you can run a sensitivity analysis by removing certain studies that you may decide, oh, I want to see what effect this has on the analysis by removing it. And you can then compare the original analysis to the sensitivity analysis throughout the app because all the results are presented side by side, as you can see here. So here I'm showing part of the data summary tab, which gives the user some basic characteristics, the individual study result, and a network plot of the evidence. And then with the analysis, MetaInsight can actually conduct the NMA under frequentist or Bayesian methods. So under the frequentist tab, you will find a forest plot of the results, a table of comparisons of all treatment pairs, so not just compared to the reference, and a tab for you to assess inconsistency. And then under the Bayesian tab, you'll again find your forest plot and your table of comparisons, but there's also a ranking table, functionality to run a node split model for, again, assessing consistency, a display of the detailed results regarding the Bayesian elements, so whether the results converged, and then some deviance reports and further details of the model itself. But what was it about MetaInsight that we thought could help with this influx of COVID-19 systematic reviews? And well, we felt there were two key benefits. Firstly, as I mentioned a bit earlier, MetaInsight, it can already run NMAs for a user's data, and we were seeing that there were all these living systematic reviews going on. So could we use that functionality to run a living network meta-analysis? And then secondly, the fact that MetaInsight encourages this exploring, reanalyzing, and sensitivity analysis of NMAs, we felt it could reduce the duplication of the systematic review work that we were possibly seeing. And in turn, that would aid rapid synthesis of the COVID-19 data when it's just under slightly different models or different patient characteristics. So we created a living version of MetaInsight tailored particularly to COVID-19. So firstly, it's very important to know it wasn't our vision to do the searching, the collating, the appraising of the COVID-19 evidence, because this was already being done. Our focus was on a tool for the NMA aspect. But for a feasibility study to actually run, we still needed data. So we extracted publicly available data from the COVID NMA initiative, which Anna will be speaking about afterwards. And so, so for this feasibility study, we updated weekly, and we did it for 6 months between May and October of 2020. And then to help with the automation of extracting the data every week, we used a Raspberry Pi, which is basically a very, very tiny computer, and we had a Python script on it, and that notified us of where the data has been updated. And then any new data that was extracted was loaded onto a live Google spreadsheet, which was great. It could be accessed by any of the team, but more importantly, it could be accessed by MetaInsight. So rather than loading the data into MetaInsight as a standard CSV file and re-uploading the app, we told it to actually look at the Google spreadsheet via its URL. And this way, MetaInsight was permanently linked with the Google spreadsheet. And because this is all web-based, whenever we updated the Google spreadsheet, the NMA output on the app would automatically update. And this functionality was super helpful practically for us. We didn't have to keep uploading and things and repeating things, but it also meant there was less time spent on the review. And then furthermore, to help with the automation and speed the review up further, we developed an auto-connect function, which would automatically detect which studies were connected to the primary network. Because as trials are coming out, when a new study came into the review, it's not a given that it's going to be connected to that primary network. And as the network gets larger and the number of studies gets larger, this is a really difficult task to do manually. So this function was great, and it did it automatically. And it was also used to detect the primary network if the network actually became disconnected, which can happen under frequentist methods, where if you have studies with 0 outcomes on both arms, they're removed automatically, and then you can get a disconnection, and this function would automatically just focus on that primary network. So that was how we tailored MetaInsight to be living for the feasibility study, but I also wanted to show a bit of what it actually looked like and how it still encouraged this exploration and reanalysis. So we gave the tool a front page, which gave the user the initial information that they'd be interested in. So the data itself, a network plot, and a forest plot of the pooled results under one model. And then if the user did want to change more detailed aspects of the analysis, they can click on the detailed data analysis tab, and that would give them access to all the standard functionality of the MetaInsight that I've just been describing. So for options to explore the data, the user can look at the network plot to see how the evidence connects, or you can look at this characteristic table, which, as well as having all the standard information that you need for an NMA, it also showed you other information, such as the country the study was conducted in, the severity of COVID in the patients. But just to note this, all those extra variables were extracted from COVID NMA. And users can really easily look through the data with this table. They could even sort it by each column, and they can also search for specific terms or names using the search bar on the top right. And then there were multiple ways the users could actually reanalyze the network meta-analysis, depending on their wishes and needs. So firstly, they could use the filter function to create certain subgroups of the data. For example, if they only wanted studies that were on patients that had severe COVID-19. And secondly, they could also just select which studies they wanted to include for whatever reasons they've discovered, literally select it and click on the rows, and it will automatically, so yeah, that would be that. And then both of the filtering and the selecting, all of the NMA output is just automatically updated, really nice and fast. And then finally, as with the standard MetaInsight, users can analyze the NMA differently from how it's done to the front page. So they can, again, choose those different options, choose whether it's random or fixed, is up to them. And again, finally, as I've mentioned in the normal MetaInsight tool, the COVID tool has a sensitivity analysis functionality. So that means after they've users been surveying the evidence of certain studies, if they can compare the results to the original analysis. So how to summarize this feasibility study and how does it relate to rapid evidence synthesis? Well, firstly, the 6-month study was a great exercise for us. It taught us lots. It taught us what difficulties exist when attempting to set up a living NMA platform. It showed us which steps can be automated to speed things up. And it brought out really useful tips that we're definitely going to be using in the future, such as the Google spreadsheet setup. And within all those lessons, we also learned about what further features may be useful. An example of that would be an option of node lumping or splitting. And this is particularly useful where you have an area that's got treatments rapidly changing. As we saw in the COVID-19 pandemic, the option of standard care, well, that was defined as it changed across the pandemic. So if we had the option of node lumping or splitting, that gives the user the choice of what to do. And finally, we believe as a group that MetaInsight COVID-19 is an example of how such an interactive platform can meet the needs of performing multiple rapid evidence syntheses, and in particular for performing multiple types of evidence syntheses that have those underlying similarities in the data. It's using all the same evidence, but just very slightly different nuanced differences, and that is again through the exploring and the reanalyzing. So thank you for listening. I also just wanted to add that whilst this was a feasibility study a year and a half ago, I am intending to move some of this work forward and build upon it in my NIHR doctoral fellowship, so watch this space. And here you can find links to the app itself. Again, please note the data in the app is out of date as it was a feasibility study, but the app does have functionality to add further studies yourself if you wish to. So there's also a link to the paper that we published, a link to the CRSU website where you can see our other apps. We've also got apps for doing network meta-analysis of diagnostic test accuracy studies, and also a link to our GitHub repository if you want to have a look at the code. And then here are some of the references. Thank you.
Thank you, Clarice. That was excellent. Sounds really interesting. One quick question from me to begin with. So do you have any plans, in the immediate future to use this app in a different context, different disease area?
Yeah, so in my doctoral fellowship, we're planning to build upon that. Particularly, there is a living systematic review going on about the use of e-cigarettes for smoking cessation. So that's a group with the University of Oxford. And so I've sort of paired with them, and I'm going to hopefully build a platform linked with that work and sort of look at maybe different UIs, one for the researchers and one for stakeholders or people wishing to quit smoking.
Okay. And have you had much feedback from users of the, about how the app works and how the results are viewed at the end?
None. I don't think we've had a lot of specific ones for the COVID-19 app, but with the general MetaInsight tool, we get lots of people interacting with us through email saying they really like it. Some people are using it as teaching tools to generally teach NMAs. So lots of use, and it's great. And we hear lots of feedback of things that we can make it better as well through those emails. So that's great.